Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to the BBSim and Scalability Brigade meeting for July 16th, 2020. Since we haven't had the meeting in the last couple weeks, I wanted to start it with an overview of the current state of the results. I sent out an email on the Brigade mailing list a couple days ago, so I guess we're pretty much on the same page. But if we take a quick look at the dashboard, at first glance, we can see we are in a pretty good state. There are two things that I think we need to discuss. One is that we are still running all the tests with etcd in memory, and that should at least be reflected in this chart. And the second one is that we have noticed that in some of the jobs, for example, this one, when we look at the state of the pod, we notice that ONOS are restarted a few times. Now, this is surprising and something we need to investigate a little more. I know there have been some issues with the upstream ONOS charts, so I'm going to take a look at that today. Because even though the job succeeded, it's not ideal that the controller restarts multiple times during a single test.
When was this job run?
This job was run yesterday. It was run.
Okay.
But it was, yeah.
I can speak to that. So basically what happened was that yesterday, European time, we fixed the restarting issue that was introduced by the 0.1.2 chart of ONOS Classic. And we fixed it by releasing a reverted commit from Jordan as 0.1.4. So there was a brief period of time for like 3-4 hours yesterday where everything was fine. Although there was also a migration of where the charts for ONOS are hosted yesterday Pacific time afternoon, as far as I understood. So what happened was that the current index.yaml file where the chart are hosted is old, is stale. So it's the latest, it shows latest as 0.1.2, while the latest is actually 0.1.4, which does not show the issue. So what I have done is I'm working with Ray to make sure we upload the latest one as an index.yaml. And at the same time, I have fixed the chart in the master kind Volta as 0.1.1, which is a passing one. So you should not see this anymore.
Okay.
You fixed the chart back because we're at 1.1 and then we went to latest. We're back at 1.1.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Again, because effectively that is the only one that reliably works and is existing without the need of an Elm repo update, which will fail right now because the 0.1.4 is not there.
Okay.
So expect tomorrow probably another commit which brings it to latest again.
Okay. Yeah, I can confirm that in the last job that ran, we didn't have the ONOS restart, and it's good that you are on top of it. Okay. Is there any comment, anything we need to discuss on this? Okay, I'll take that as a no. The second thing on the agenda is the collection of CPU and memory informations for all the pods. I started working on this on yesterday. As you know, Prometheus was running on the scale pod and it was accessible during a run, but we weren't collecting much result out of it, if not some very small JSON files. So yesterday I spent a little time writing a script that basically queries Prometheus, does some parsing of that JSON of the data that come out of Prometheus and generate some kind of charts, like for example, this one for the memory usage, so we can have a quick view of what is happening. Now, this is a four-shot at it. I tried to group the various components by color, but I think this is still fairly confusing. So I'll see how hard it is to generate multiple plots for the different group of components. So it's understand what's happening in every single variable. Yeah.
Just a quick question: why are there two ONOS instances per instance?
I was getting there. That happens. This was from the run number 9 I displayed yesterday, and that happens when the container restarts.
I see. Thanks.
So basically, you see that these blue lines for ONOS stops at a certain point and then restart. And being those technically different containers, Prometheus compute them as different set of data.
That's a good one to have, though, that it shows the fact that it restarted.
Yeah. I agree. That's why I didn't spend time trying to figure out that it was the same and patching the data together, because I think it makes sense to see these differences. So I don't know. I think this already gives us some information, because we can see that the things that use the most memory are atomics, ONOS, and the TCD has a big spike. Zookeeper down here is using some memory, but we don't have anything that uses a crazy amount of memory. The one that uses the most is atomics, that is around 1.5 gigabyte. The other thing I need to do is that these are now expressed in bytes. That is not very useful. And each of these has to be multiplied basically for 1,000,000. So I'll do the conversion in the script, and I'll print out the scale in gigabyte.
Yeah, seeing this graph, because atomics also is all in memory right now, right? It's not using a persistent volume for its storage.
Correct? That's correct.
So it'd be interesting how this graph changes both around atomics and etcd if we start using disk persistence.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I'll take a note. Okay. And the other data that we are collecting is the CPU consumption. Basically, the CPU usage the CPU second usage per pod. And also here we see that there is nothing that is crazy high. I was surprised to see that the BBSim said this server it's pretty constant in his growth, probably because it's recomputing the cache every few seconds. And we see that the core has a pretty big spike, and this is, I believe, when the renew comes up. And I still need to interpolate the data with the result of the test. But that's pretty much.
Yeah, if that's a spike though, when the device is provisioning, it's weird that it levels off fairly high, doesn't come back down.
Well, this is the total, so it will never
Oh,
come down.
okay.
So if it levels up, means that the thing is not very busy.
Okay, so it flattens out. Okay, that makes sense then. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm planning to add charts like this to measure the TCD growth in key and the number of messages. If you want to take a look at the page generating these graphs, it's something very, very trivial. It's basically one-liner while iterating through the data. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully this will be integrated with the pipeline by today, and we can start evolving on it in the next few days and weeks. And then the last topic I have.
Well, Matteo. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the idea behind collecting all these graphs is so that we can determine for a single OLT. Are you doing this with two OLTs or a single OLT?
I'm planning to add this to all the jobs in the pipeline. So we'll have it for both one OLT and two OLTs.
Okay. So, and this will help us towards sizing, etcd, Kafka, the whole thing, the whole stack.
Ideally,
in
yes.
terms of CPU memory.
Yeah,
But
this will tell us. Yeah,
go ahead. No, you do. You go ahead.
No, I was just saying this will tell us how much memory and how much CPU and later on the disk size of the CD and the number of messages in Kafka. So it should be able to help us in sizing the servers that we need to support a certain configuration.
But I'm wondering if there needs to be a more systematic approach to sizing. Anybody has any thoughts on?
What do you mean by a more systematic approach?
So I'm wondering, right? So if you have, if you collect this for more than the number of variations that you have right now, does it tell us something? Right now you have one OLT with 500 ONUs and two OLTs with 500 ONUs, right? That's 2 data points. Does it tell you anything about the growth, or does it tell you anything about I'm saying what I'm trying to get at is 2 data points good enough for you to draw conclusions about sizing? Yeah.
No, I would say we need at least 3, but the more the merrier, because with 2 points, whatever the result has, we'll always have a linear growth. With 3 points, we may see that it's curved. So I'll probably schedule a job with a smaller number of ONUs just to have some more data points.
Are we looking just to scale around the ONU number and do more data points around that? I mean, it also comes down to what are our recommended deployment deployment ratio of OLT to stacks, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I thought it was important to get more data points around a single OLT, right?
Okay.
So, you know, if I have one OLT and I try it at different ONU levels, say three different ONU levels, that tells us something. And then if I add 2 OLTs or 5 OLTs, but with, you know, some number of ONUs, then it tells us something else, right? And then you can start drawing patterns, right? Okay, that if I have servers sized this way, then with, you know, this much memory, I can afford to go up to 5 OLTs with, say, 200 ONUs each. But if any one of these OLTs starts growing towards 1,000 ONUs, then it's time to migrate some of these OLTs onto a second stack or something like that. What I'm trying to get at is that are there more data points that we can use to draw graphs to understand when it's necessary to migrate to more stacks?
Well, yeah, and if we're going to, as part of the deployment, say, look, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, it's a n-to-1 ratio, OLTs to cores, then yeah, I would think you're going to need okay, here's my numbers with one OLT, you know, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 ONUs or whatever the top notch is. Then 2 OLTs, whatever the increment is, it's going to be 500,000. You know, you're going to do that whole matrix of tests.
Yeah. So what I get out of this is that with the first thing, so after adding the ability to collect this result in the pipeline, we'll need to add support for the multiple steps in the pipeline. That's something we haven't measured yet, meaning we don't know while provisioning 1,000 NUs, we don't know what are the difference of doing that on a single stack or splitting the 2 OLTs onto different stacks while still sharing Kafka and etcd.
And again, to get these recommendations in production, it means you're probably going to be running Kafka with persistent messaging as well as etcd on using a disk, probably an SSD, as well as Atomic. So there's also some very different configurations that we're going to be running if we're looking to scale, you know, give recommendations on deployments in production.
Agreed. The other question is, in production, would you run a database on top of Kubernetes?
On top of Redis?
On top of Kubernetes.
Oh, Kubernetes. Yeah, I mean, it may be that they're running etcd in Kubernetes. It may be that they're running etcd completely standalone as a process. Either one is a viable deployment option. I think that, you know, the question is, it might be that I'm running etcd in Kubernetes, but on a different cluster too, a different or a dedicated node set, right? There's a lot of different deployment options. We have to decide which ones we're going to test for. I think the disk persistence is probably going to be more important than necessarily running it not on Kubernetes cluster.
Or at least we can say that we're reasonably sure that people will want to persist the data regardless of what they're running.
Yes, yeah.
By looking at this graph, can we decide that at the peak time, how many cores is in use? For example, I can say that the OpenOLT adapter needs at least 4 cores. No, not. This is the memory chart.
Yeah.
CPU charge. So the OpenOLT adapter uses 400% CPU. Am I correct?
No, it uses 400 seconds of
Seconds.
CPU.
So what that means? What does it mean?
Another related comment to that. I think this graph would be more useful if it wasn't the total. If we could just see the CPU usage over time, because then you'd be able to see, like, okay, at this moment in time, sort of if you add up all the graphs, this is how much CPU was used in that. Is this once per second? Yes, it's once per second. So then you could see
It's
how much
1 per
cycles of
minute.
CPU per second, and know how many CPUs you need.
I think this is also going to be, look, under different conditions, we're going to see different load both on memory and CPU usage, right? If I have a core restart or an OLT restart, and all the ONUs come up, it's a very different profile than a steady state system where I'm bringing up an ONU every half hour, right? And so that needs to be considered too somehow.
Yeah, so this spike is basically simulating the OLT restart because we are bringing up everything together. So this
Right.
is like the worst case scenario that we are measuring.
Right.
Right. I'm just wondering how difficult it would be for this graph to show, like, sort of a spike and go back down in that case.
Well, not too difficult because we'll just need to do a little math while iterating on the data.
Yeah, the data is there. It's just the math.
Yeah. I mean, instead of plotting the data as they are, I need to take this point minus this point and plot the result.
Yeah.
Because
I would prefer that. I don't know if there's an agreement on that. But.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that. This was a very first shot I took at it yesterday. When you go into, no, yeah, it actually shows the same exact data, but yeah, it's a fairly simple calculation.
Okay.
Oh no, actually Prometheus calculates the difference, but then doesn't export it because it calculates this in real time, doesn't store it.
Okay.
But yeah, it should be doable also to show to make the same calculation that we do here in the dashboard and represent the percentage instead of the CPU usage, because this is exactly the query that is happening. So we just need to look up what this array function does.
Do we have access to this site?
I can, as now, no, because you need to be connected to the ONF VPN.
Okay.
I can chat with Zach and see if it's possible to expose this page.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering, can you just select one component and see all the stats on it? Like, for example, HCD.
Yeah. So okay. So the annoying thing is that this dashboard is stored down anytime the build completes. So now it goes away, but yeah, you can select the same container in different dashboard and see how it behaves.
But in theory, you could run Prometheus on, or this type of monitor on your local install too. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anytime you can run this on top of client Vault. There are, I'm not sure if there are instructions. I can send them in the mail, but if you look up in the scale test pipeline, and they look for NEM monitoring. This is actually the only thing you need to do to install it, and it will deploy on the cluster and hook itself up to get all the information that it needs.
Okay. In the HCD graph, the one thing that is when you were just showing earlier, the usage was around the disk usage was somewhere around like 1 gig. Was that RAM or was that? I guess it's RAM because you're not running anything on disk.
Yeah, that was a memory. Now that starting another build, so we can get that. Yeah, that's most likely. That was either the CPU usage or the memory.
Okay, thanks.
But there is another dashboard here that collects the etcd specific information. So you get the eventual DB size, how long does it take to write on the disk, memory, numbers of requests, etc.
So anyway, the point I was trying to get at is that maybe we need to document, based on the feedback you've gotten today, we need to document a procedure for sizing that talks about all the data points and what we hope to evaluate from the data collected. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Okay, I'll prepare this document and I'll try to do it today and send it out on the mailing list to get some feedback on it.
So in my opinion, it's important to go through this sizing exercise while we are still trying to improve the stack, right? We know there are some outstanding issues in the stack in terms of the issues that we see when we put etcd into disk, the issues that we had about the non-granular locks on PON ports in the OpenOLT adapter. Anything else that, at some point, the ONU adapters will also come in and go. So those are all stack improvements. But this sizing exercise, of course, the numbers of this sizing exercise may change with the stack improvements. So, but I still think getting some handle on the sizing is a good thing for us, and possibly more important at this point than, say, waiting for the sizing, waiting for the stack improvements, or working on multi-stack. What do others feel? I mean, this is my
Could this be an automated thing though, right? Is there any reason we can't automate running the whole matrix, size matrix thing, run it weekly, whatever we want, and then from that publish a table and say, here's what the data showed in terms of that matrix run for sizing. And therefore, when we do improvements to the stacks or whatever, that data is automatically updated.
Yes, I think that's very much Matteo's goal. Every time I ask something, he does automate everything, so that he doesn't have to manually run different runs. Once a week plan to collect these automated numbers is actually quite reasonable.
Yeah, and you're going to want it for both the master branch as well as like the 2.4 branch, right? And then you can watch those numbers and see if they start diverging in a bad way. And if they do, that's a hint that something's up.
So yes and no, because there is a limitation. So I agree on the principle, it would be amazing, but there is a limitation to the number of jobs we can run on the cluster. Every job takes around 15 minutes. And so if we want to run them as we do now in a 4-hour cycle, we can run basically 16 jobs. And when we start with these metrics, we can easily arrive to a huge number of jobs.
So the matrix, I think we were saying we don't want to run it like you run the other scale jobs, right? The frequency of running this matrix would be much, much less, maybe like David was saying, once a week. Not every 4 hours.
Was once a week.
Sorry?
I understood that we were running the jobs periodically, as we do, and then once a week we were collecting the average results of those jobs and combining them together.
I don't know about that. Is that what you were implying, David? That you're still running it?
No, I was implying that you can run whatever you want periodically, but once a week, you say, I'm now going to reserve the machines to run the matrix.
Yeah, we can do that.
And it runs the matrix and generates the sizing chart, a date stamped sizing chart against maybe 2.4 and master branch. So you're kind of getting both the 2.4 LTS plus what's on the master, and just do that once a week, which means you're probably going to need to reserve these machines for that time period, because you're going to be banging away on them, unless we're going to be doing something like spot instances, getting extra spot instances on AWS to run it all. But then you don't have real hardware.
Yeah, reserving the machine is not a big deal, because Jenkins is set up so that only one job can run on that cluster at any time. So even if you don't reserve them and you schedule manual jobs, what will happen is that the jobs will pile up, and 15 minutes, like, it's the worst case scenario when things fail and we keep checking something that will never happen. When the tests succeed, they run much faster, so the queue will decrease over time.
And this, depending on what we test, we're talking maybe 15 jobs, right? So yeah, it'll take almost a day to generate all the data, but that's not a big deal.
It will take 15 jobs will take pretty much 4 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not a big deal. The reason I was saying to get multiple jobs and aggregate the result is that, as you can see in these random example that I pull up, the numbers are not consistent all the time. There are some great variation. So if I make the measurement in this point, instead of in this one, I get two completely different results if I do a single run. So I'm not sure how informative those results are.
I think this chart's informative, because that says we got, we're still seeing spikes like this every now and then.
So these ones, basically 8 to 11 is when ONUS was restarted. So of course it took a long time to report the ports to ONUS.
Yeah, so I would look at these as anomalies and say, look, if we get an anomaly in the data, that we need to understand the anomaly, but not try to average it out.
No, I agree. But in order to see the anomaly, you need to have multiple data points. Because if I only have this, I say, oh, ONUS is super slow in receiving the ports.
Right. That's where I think Saurav was saying we're still going to run periodic scale tests, but getting the data for the matrix is potentially different from that. least that's what I understand. I don't know if that was your thoughts or not.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was what I was getting, and I understand Mateo's point as well. But
Probably
if you
we can run the matrix job once a week, but maybe not having it an automated trigger, but manual trigger, so we can check in that master is actually stable when we trigger that job. If that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Or maybe we should. So these jobs. All of these jobs actually run using the master version of all the images. So what we should probably do for the matrix job is to use whatever is specified in the chart. So there is no variability, and at that point we assume that has to be stable, and those are the official results of the master. But I can get started with this document and summarize what we said.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to start talking about that will actually, as you can see from the last point, probably require another planning document, is that we need to add support for the TurkTelecom workflow in BBSim. In my understanding, the first thing that we need to do is to address this issue that's been open for a while. That basically means replace the pre-canned OMCI library that we have in BBSim with the same library we are using in the OpenVNU Golang adapter. And we need to do that in order to be able to manage multiple units in BBSim and to let BBSim knows about these multiple units. And we need to do that because in the TurkTelecom workflow, each unit will have a different combination of CNS type. Does it make sense to everyone?
I missed your last sentences, Matteo.
Oh,
What
so
did you say about the multi-units?
Yeah,
Are you talking about multiple unis on a single U? Because nobody uses that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's simply multiple services on a single unit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, as I still believe we will need to, well, we can go down two ways. We can leave BBSim as is with the OMCI SIM library that takes care of the OMCI exchange, and simply add support for multiple services on the ONU. Or we can go this extra step and make it more transparent so that we can actually manage the different units. Ideally, I think it would be good to replace the OMCI SIM library, but I understand it's a resource availability discussion. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a much more work now
Yes.
to replace the library at this point.
Yes, but the more we go down this line, the harder it's going to be to remove. So it's fine to say we'll do it later, but the more abstraction we build around the single unit, the revenue, the harder is going to be to add support for multiple.
Matteo, I remember that we have talked with you. There is a CTEC and maybe STEC, I'm not sure. At least CTEC information in the flows already coming to BBSim. So maybe we can use that information instead of parsing to MCI data. I think currently we are using the BBSim in that way in our workflows. Sometimes in some places we hard coded some CTEC and STEC information, but I remember there was something in the OLT adapter or in the RV code that the CTEC information doesn't come down in a flow, but after changing that, the information is available in the flow. But I'm not sure where was the that a commit causes that. Maybe you remember.
Not really sure, Serkan, but
okay, Gamze did that work. I can take the information from Gamze.
so you mean we can do this multi-service support in BBSim without parsing the OMC and change the OMC library?
Yeah, no need to change the OMCI library. If we get the CTEC information from the flows.
Yeah, but we can also, so the way BBSim works now is that you configure the CNS tag in BBSim itself for the Deutsche Telekom and the AT&T workflow. And we can do the same for the TurkTelecom workflow without replacing the OMCI library. So replacing the OMCI library will need to do that only when we support multiple units. So we can postpone that.
So all we need to do is sending the DHCP packets with the correct CTEX, right? For the TurkTelecom workflow.
That's the only DHCP request that will happen.
And then there's IGMP, but you already have IGMP support in BBSim, right?
I've never tested it. I don't know.
I think the Infosys. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I see the code in BBSim, but I've never tested.
Yeah, it's only a matter of figuring out how to tell BBSim about these multiple services, because we're basically adding an extra layer, because as down for all the packets, BBSim just look at the CNS tag that is assigned to the ONU, while when we have multiple services, we'll need to look at the CNS tags that are assigned to that particular service. It will require a little bit of design, but it should be much easier than replacing the OMCI library.
we also prepared a document for the BBSim requirements for the Turkish telecom workflow, right? Do you remember the document?
Yeah, we worked on that a little while ago. But let's see if I can pull it up. This one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so this is I'll start from this, and I'll extend it, trying to list what are the exact changes required in BBSim to support these multiple services.
Can you please link this doc to your main agenda doc? Thanks.
So the item
And,
3, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Item 3B at that document. Can you? Yeah. No, item 4B. Yeah. However, there is no VLAN information in trap flows. Even though ONOS relays this information, we found out that VLAN information is discarded by the OpenOLT adapter. Yeah, we changed that part in OpenOLT adapter and getting the jump port information from the flows.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's more to set the gem port on the packet in, packet out.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that whatever contributions are required to BBSim, according to this doc, can actually be contributed by other people. As Mateo works on the matrix and other things, we can't load everything on Mateo. So would that be okay? Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thanks.
We changed some things, some codes in BBSim, but we are not sure if our changes will work with other workflows. So that is why we didn't contribute it back.
So, but do you have this already working?
Yes, in our workflow, yes, it's working.
So I think if you're willing to upstream that, then it will be, even if as now it doesn't work with other workflow, that would be a great starting point and we can check with the community to have someone.
Yes, we can do that, but we need to modify them. For example, you already implemented it in BBSim without the EAP. No, we changed something else. For example, without the GAM ports received by the OMCI channel, in BBSim, we are not sending the DHCP flows. For example, we changed that part. We are not taking care of the jump ports coming from the OMC channel.
Okay,
so
because there is
if another workflow cares about that, that will break that workflow. I don't know. Yeah, I can upstream them and we can check.
Yeah, I think that even if as now it doesn't work with other workflow, it can still be a great starting point.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this is everything I had for today. I think it was a pretty good meeting. We have a fair amount of work to do as usual, but that's good. I think we are preparing the path to some good new features.
Yeah, but we've also come a long way. I think we should collectively as a brigade be proud of the achievements in the last 4 months or so that we've had this brigade. I think it's really awesome that we hit our targets for 2.4.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention that I completely forgot to put on the plan is that Shrey is working on a pipeline to measure the performances of the Golang version of the OpenONU adapter, so that we'll be able to start measuring them from the early stages. I chatted with him this morning. We should have a patch by the end of the day.
Thanks, Theo. It would be great if you could also join the bi-weekly Wednesday call that we have.
Yeah.
It's on the public court calendar. So if you hear from him, please tell him to join, and be happy to guide him through. And he'll also gonna meet Michael and Holger and the other folks working on it.
Sure. I'll let you know. Is the next call next Wednesday, or was it yesterday?
It is next Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see if he can join. But if not, I don't think it's a huge deal because his internship is due in basically 20 days. So.
Oh, okay.
But I'll let him know. Okay.
Thanks.
Is there anything else we need to discuss?
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for the amazing work. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right.